Welcome to Out of Home Insider. Today's guest is Jack Delehey. Jack is the co-founder of FlyBy Ads. And you may know FlyBy Ads for their incredible work on the campaign for season 2 of the Amazon hit show Jack Ryan, with coverage of the campaign ranging from Adweek to Jeff Bezos himself. They don't just put big ads on rooftops near airports, though. They're a legitimate media company with an ever-expanding real estate portfolio of premium locations that fit their pedigree. Their team is led by Jack and his partner Jordan, who got to know airports really well, traveling an astonishing 200,000 miles a year as consultants before starting FlyBy Ads. Sharing an alma mater, love of sports, craft beer, but most importantly, romantic comedies, Jack and Jordan are creating conversations daily for the world's largest brands with their unique approach to out of home. Jack, thanks for being here, my friend.
Really appreciate you having me, Tim. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor to have you here and really an honor to ask you the first and maybe the most important question of each episode. How'd you get started in out of home?
The $1 million question, right? And I wish I could say it was that easy to just answer it with one sentence, but it really is at least a little bit of a story. You kind of just started talking about it there in the intro, but really, truly 4 years ago, if you were to say the term out of home, I would have said, what are you saying? Obviously now I feel like I use that term hundreds of times per day. But really it started, Jordan, my co-founder, and I, we graduated from college and we were consultants, and anyone who's been a consultant or knows kind of how that lifestyle works, it's pretty bizarre. But basically you pick a home city where you want to be, but your work isn't there. You hop on an airplane 6 a.m. Monday morning, come back 9 p.m. Thursday nights usually. And you go to the client site, wherever that is. So Jordan and I were doing that. We were on very different projects, but we were flying all the time. And so probably about a year into that is when, Jordan and I were always, even back in college, kind of spitting business ideas at each other. We always kind of had that creative approach. He's a little bit more of kind of like the brainstorm guy, and I'm a little bit more of the okay, how do we actually execute guy? And, we kind of, I would say we're starting to hit the burnout phase of consulting. And one day we were both in our hotel rooms across the country, just kind of brainstorming business ideas. And, he said, hey, we fly all the time, look out of airplanes. Why don't people use that space? Airplanes landing at airports are a very targeted landing zone every single time, consistently. We looked it up at Hartsfield-Jackson. It's like every 48 seconds, a plane's coming in.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how it started. We didn't even know that what we were looking into was in the out of home world. We just were like, I don't know why people don't put signs on rooftops. And obviously now fast forward really 3.5, 4-ish years. And that's where we are now. We are in the out of home world, which we didn't even know we were going to enter. So it's been quite a wild ride in between there, but I've loved every second of it.
From a co-founder standpoint, because something you touched on is something that's come up in previous episodes and even conversations. How important was it that you each had your unique skill set, right? You commented that Jordan kind of the idea guy, yourself, you're the execution guy, Jobs and Wozniak, that duality. How important has that been to viability?
I mean, I think it's been everything. And I think probably equally as important is communicating those strengths and honestly weaknesses. Even this past week, right, we've been creating some new marketing materials, and I put my hand up and say, hey, I suck at that. Jordan, can you take the lead here, right? And so it's kind of a communication back and forth. I think it works out really well because we are such good friends, and we did know each other for really 6 years before even considering going into business with each other. We studied abroad together. We, were in college together. So I think the communication is equally as important as understanding your strengths and weaknesses. And they definitely play off each other well. And then we do also have some common areas, which kind of allows us to, guide the company together under the same principles.
Makes sense. And in the intro, we talked about the Amazon campaign, Jack Ryan, which is one of my favorite shows. I love it. So I love that you guys are the brains behind that. How did something like that come to be?
Yeah, it's a process. It certainly was a process, and I think again, equally as unusual of a process as it is to try to get in. It's not just you don't just pick up the phone and call Amazon, right? That's really not something
Only it was that easy.
that we can do. Maybe you can. I don't know, Tim, with all your connections, but we couldn't do that. And so we basically were kind of figuring it out along the way. And again, flashback to 4 years ago, we didn't even know out-of-home ad agencies were a thing. If you had asked me how Amazon does their, puts a billboard up, I would have said, I don't know, someone in marketing at Amazon just calls a billboard company. And what you realize is just these huge brands are too big to basically have everything be internal. So now you have, kind of the intermediate step, which is the ad agency to kind of handle that all. So we ended up after, probably years of kind of getting our foot in the door and saying, hey, we may be the new guys, but we think we have a cool product, working with Rapport out in LA, and they were fantastic. And they kind of, when Amazon came to them eventually and said, hey, we kind of want something new and cool and unique, they really kind of, put our name forward. So we owe a lot to them. It obviously was about building relationships and figuring that out over years. But when push came to shove, they kind of put our name forward. And from then it was like, oh, wow, here we go. We need to perform because we've got Amazon on the line here. So, it ended up working out, which was kind of fantastic for us to have under our belt.
So, and because there's a lot of folks that listen to the show that are in business development or some sort of sales role, right? What was most important there? It sounds like maybe you were working with Rapport. Hey, we've got this idea. We don't know who it's a great fit for. What things worked in the sales process that ultimately got you to consideration with Amazon? Because I'm sure a lot of things took place before they just said, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, they did. And I think probably that, a lot of salespeople hear this, but it is the truth. Building real relationships and not just, superficial relationships. We certainly got to know the people over there, and we did do in-person visits, which I know these days is a little bit more difficult. But I think it was just kind of getting to know them on a more personal level. And then from there, obviously, keeping them informed. It's one thing to go and grab beers or coffee with them at some point. But then if you go kind of quiet for a year, guess what? They've got a ton of different clients and a ton of opportunities. And so it is important to stay top of mind. So, number one, I'd say just kind of actually getting to know them. And number two, being slightly persistent, not overwhelmingly persistent, but letting them know that you have new opportunities available. And, we added a bunch of rooftops near LAX, and it was important to let them know that. And then it ended up they actually wanted rooftops at LAX. And if we hadn't informed them, who knows where that conversation would have gone. So it's always a balance.
Right. And being open-minded. Hey, I've got this great platform. I've got this great vehicle that you can use. I'm not going to come to you necessarily with the idea fully baked, because maybe I want you to be open-minded and be creative around that. Who could use this, and not just shoehorning them into, hey, this is the client I had it in mind for, yes or no. Was that part of the process too, kind of open application?
Yeah, and I'm actually glad you bring that up, Tim. So with that exact campaign that we're talking about, the Amazon one, it went exactly like that, where we actually had rooftops that we had agreements with near LAX. They then came back to us and said, hey, Amazon is thinking about doing this sign. They want 6 rooftops, but they all need to be touching each other. And we said, that is such a cool idea. Hold on a sec. We got to make sure we have 6 rooftops touching each other, right? So it was kind of a give and take. We didn't immediately come to them and say, hey, we have this cluster of 6 and we think it only works with this brand. We said, we've got some rooftops. They came back with an idea, and then we made it work. We found 6 rooftops that all were touching each other. So it had the nice Jack is back Amazon Prime, and it kind of worked seamlessly together. We wouldn't have even come up with that idea without kind of their insight. So it really is a give and take, not boxing yourself in. And I will say, I think that's something that we're able to do because, it's just the two of us. So we're kind of able to think creatively on our feet and personalize projects like that, where, other big companies, that's not a knock on them. They're obviously, much more substantial, but because we're small and lean and we actually purposely focus on being just that, young, lean, and hungry, we're able to kind of, take those next level creative executions to the max.
From the business owner standpoint, I saw a great testimonial video from you on the YouTubes. talking about how the evolution took place of beyond ad space really becoming a proper media company and investing in these real estate holdings. How has the business evolved over the 4 to 5 years to become what it is today?
Yeah. So, it's kind of funny. This whole out of home advertising world really sees only like half of what we do, which is kind of interesting. The billboard owners out there are going to understand this part, but there's an entire other half, which is like the real estate part. Everyone on kind of the advertising side sees, the Obie Award or the, Amazon campaign or Bud Light or what we do. But a huge portion of it, we really devote a lot of time to nurturing relationships with real estate partners. We don't own the buildings, just like kind of a billboard company, they might not own the land that the billboard sits on. And it's really important, we play this middle ground, but it's really important to have good relationships on both sides. And so I think that's something we've really prided ourselves from the start, is saying, hey, super cool idea, but if we don't have rooftops and rooftop owners who like us and agree with our idea and are willing to give us their rooftops, the idea goes nowhere. So I think that's something over these last few years we've really tried to continue to develop, is our real estate partnerships, and not just, signing agreements to let us utilize the rooftops whenever we have ads, but really kind of getting to know them. The perfect example is, I will give, two shout outs here. Our first ever real estate partner was Prologis. They're a huge industrial real estate company. They've been fantastic. They really were with us from the early days, loving the idea. And then secondly, much smaller, but if you ever go to Whole Foods, Kika Sushi, amazing sushi, and 2 of those 6 rooftops for Amazon Prime were Kika Sushi warehouses. So I'm a loyalist through and through to this day. Whenever I'm in Whole Foods, I make sure to pick up some of their sushi and text a photo to the president, because they were just absolutely tremendous, and they actually supplied the electricity for the lights on that sign. So anyway, 2 real estate shout outs there. Had to get them in.
No, that's strong, man. And so talk to me more about that, right? You brought up LAX, ton of traffic as the world starts getting back to traveling more. Where else can people potentially see a FlyBy ad?
Yes. So, ideas started with us looking out of airplane windows. So that's where we went first. I think for a lot of companies, the coronavirus pandemic has been tough, to say the least. Certainly has for us. Our, airplane traffic is down tremendously. But for us also, it's been a little bit of a blessing, because we kind of were able to take a step back and say, hey, are there any other avenues we can really utilize our medium? When you're, as you probably know, as a lot of people listening to this podcast, it's really easy to just kind of get into your routine, and, 8 to 12 hours a day, you're kind of just doing what you're doing. And we were doing airports. And during this pandemic, it's been nice to be able to take a step back, and we said, hey, could we put our signs on rooftops of buildings in downtown locations? And, what would that look like? And so we kind of really have been heads down for the last 60, 90 days, doing a lot of research, making a lot of real estate relationships and agreements, and figuring out exactly how that would work. And we're super excited about it. So last month, we officially launched our 5th wall, which is basically our downtown rooftop wallscape, right? You see wallscapes in downtown areas. There are 4 walls to them. We're just a wallscape on the 5th wall. And so it's allowed us, we're certainly not finished with our airport ads, and we hope to continue growing that whenever people do get to flying again. But it was a nice opportunity for us to be able to say, hey, can we add something else to our repertoire? And that's what we've done. And so far, the response has been pretty tremendous.
I love it. Just looking for opportunity where it presents itself. Who's the target audience for that rooftop ad? Is it truly just someone flying over downtown Dallas?
So there'd be the occasional, I'm in a helicopter doing a city tour, I'm a tourist, that's cool. But I mean, that's just not enough impressions. So no, our rooftops are really calculated, honestly, probably more than we calculate our rooftops for airports, because we're basically targeting, if you've ever been in New York City or LA or Chicago, or, I'm only listing those cities, there's, probably dozens in the United States where you have high-rise residential apartments, and they look down onto much lower buildings that honestly you're looking down onto like rusty HVAC equipment. It's not the best look. And so our goal is really to target those high rise, probably during these times, residential high rises, and say, hey, instead of looking at some rusty HVAC equipment or moldy rooftop, you could look at a creative, perhaps artistic sign that would serve as advertising, but also honestly, if you ask them, might be, less of an eyesore than, something on the rooftop. So that's kind of our goal. We also, if people do end up going back into offices, sure, there are tons of, buildings where people looking down from their office window could see. But at least right now, given the state of the world, we're really targeting rooftops below residential high rises.
Smart. It's a specific audience. And, Rick Robinson, classically known for it being the people's space, right? It's something that he talks about a lot. And it could be just that. It could just be like, I don't want to be a bad neighbor because I know my roof is ugly. I'll give these people something to look at. It could be that simple, monetizing space and a way to entertain as well. I know that if I was living in a city high rise and I looked down, there was a cool ad that I'm going to take pictures and share it on social and things like that. How much of the FlyBy Ads model or the allure is just that, creating conversation around this unique execution? Is that something that brands say, hey, this is really important to us when they consider you, or not so much?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I love the question because when we first, came up with the FlyBy Ads model, we didn't even think about taking photos or social media. Our eyes really were, I'm a business traveler. I've got my corporate Amex. I'm hungry. I'm about to land in this airport. And if I see an ad for, Chick-fil-A right before I land, I'm probably going to go to the Chick-fil-A versus the Sbarro, right? And that was kind of our mindset, just business traveler looking out the airplane window. We basically kind of have fallen into this, oh, wow, social media can't just be an additional, aspect to that. It actually could be a significantly bigger aspect. And we've, learned that over the last few years. It started out with kind of our Bud Light campaign a couple Super Bowls back, and we watched what social media did when, individuals were taking photos of that, posting it on their social media. It went viral on LinkedIn for a while. And then I would say, the biggest example was with our Amazon campaign with Jack is Back, we did the math. It had about 600,000 impressions from views out of the airplane window over the course of the 30 days that it ran at LAX. And that was, direct physical impressions. Jeff Bezos tweeted out a photo, and just over the course of about a week, we did the math, and it was about 13 million impressions. So you just, you start doing the math and you say, oh, this isn't just an additional component. This actually could be the much bigger component. And that's something we only realized after we started.
And that's kind of the beauty of an evolution, right? Is we get into it just as simply as you said, hey, I could be compelled to make a decision when I land based on an ad that I see, or I could potentially go viral with this thing that's worth sharing and worth talking about. I think that's pretty neat. And you guys definitely have a unique model. If here's the segment that we've been starting to integrate, and I was going to ask the question without giving credit to my man Carlos, who came up with the idea to start building this in. If you weren't in out of home right now, right, and you didn't get into out of home to be in out of home, but if you weren't doing FlyBy Ads right now, what do you think you'd be doing?
That is a really interesting question. So my parents always asked me this when I was growing up. And from ages like 5 to 10, it was always I wanted to be a professional hockey player. I hit about 10 years old and realized that just wasn't going to happen. So then I transitioned to I wanted to be an announcer or a newscaster, specifically on SportsCenter. So that was kind of always my answer until about 18, when I feel like the old days of SportsCenter are now gone. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
when it used to be, you would know you could wake up 10 minutes before the end of the hour. So let's say at like 6:50 a.m. and you'd get the top 10. And then if you watch till 6:10 a.m. right before school, you'd get like the rundown, the early morning, right? And SportsCenter was great. Anyway, I haven't probably watched SportsCenter in 10 years. So that's a long way to say, I don't know. I'd love to think that there's no way I would be in my consulting role still. I think I was going to hit kind of my wall one way or another there. But I think if there's anything I've realized from doing this, while I don't have a specific answer what I'd be doing, there's no way I'd be working for somebody else. At this point, I am all in on the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And I truly love it, but it's also, I don't know if I would, be doing whatever I'd be doing without a partner. I think it has been a true blessing to be able to work with Jordan. When we have some bad days, it's really nice to be able to talk to him. When we have great days, it's much more fun to celebrate and give him a high five versus just like pumping myself up. So it's been, whatever the course has been fantastic, and whatever lies in the future has been great. But I think in some way, shape, or form, it'll just involve solving problems.
Dig it. I dig it. Let's see. Second question. Oh, this is a good one. I think specifically for you guys. We talked about the fifth wall. We talked about travel picking back up, but crystallize it. What are you most excited about right now?
What I'm most excited about? Well, I will say, in some way, shape, or form, if the NHL playoffs come back, and that can just be on in the background of my working life pretty much 24/7, because word on the street is it'll be in 2 hub cities. So that means we'll probably have games going almost all day. I mean, that would just be tremendous. So I'm pretty excited for that. But I'd say on like a more real note, I am excited for, I think, a little bit more normalcy in life. It's been, like I said, it's been kind of a blessing and a curse the last few months. It's been tremendously sad to see what's happened in the world. But I think with the summer coming up, a little bit more normalcy will be good. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can balance that with kind of the new norm and understanding that there are, safety precautions that have to be in place while we can also kind of keep our economy alive. So I think that's my real answer, but NHL playoffs would be nice too.
Listen, I'm with you. In the format, I think would be killer. March Madness for professional hockey. I'm in all day. Let's go. Exactly. How about a book recommendation? If you're not a reader, it's a podcast. Where do you go for inspiration, ideas, perspective? What's something you might recommend?
Okay. I'm a big time book reader, so I've got a few here. The first I would say, all right, this is, I think a lot of the listeners here will understand it and probably have heard it, but Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek changed my life. I think it was written in 2007. So there's a lot that while reading in 2020, you need to just take with a grain of salt and realize it's not applicable. I'd say probably the first third of the book is ways to convince your boss that working from home can still be efficient, which is so funny now because basically none of that applies anymore because everyone is working from home. So you can kind of skip the first third or gloss over it. But I think more importantly, what it really hammered home in my mind is, time is one of the few resources we simply don't get back. And so how to kind of make the most of your time. And I think the title slightly glorified 4-Hour Workweek. That's kind of ridiculous. But the point is, after I read that, I really started thinking about where my hours were going and how to, perhaps work, a 7 or an 8-hour day, but do it really, really well so that I can go and hang with my family or my friends or go get 9 holes of golf in and not feel bad about it, that type of thing, right? And so that was kind of life-changing. I highly recommend it. Again, there's some things in there that are very 2007, but just the mindset. I reread it once a year. And then secondly, I'd say it's actually one of my idols, Tom Brady, who has gone from my team, the Patriots, to Jordan, my co-founder's team, the Tampa Bay Bucks. But his favorite book is The Four Agreements. Really, really thin book, but it's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? You've got your businessy books, which I read a lot, but I'm also kind of into life appreciation. And you can read it in, half a day. But it really is just kind of an entire mindset shift to really appreciate the moment, which I think, in these times is something that's really important. So those are my two. If we ever do this again, I've got an entire shelf of books under me right now, but we'll stick with those.
No, listen, I think those are both great recommendations. It's actually the second time that the Four Agreements has been a book recommendation on the show. So listen, I had a great mentor that said, if anytime you get told something twice, you should probably pay attention to it. So there it is, folks. There it is. Twice. You need to go buy the 4 Agreements and read it if you haven't. So, no, this has been great. And we should. We'll have to do it again soon. And maybe we can even rendezvous and do it at an airport because that would be a lot of fun. But I'm looking to getting back to traveling. What are the next 3 months going to look like for you guys? What do you think is going to be the next 90 days?
Yeah, so I think, fingers crossed, I think a lot's going to happen. We've, like I said, we really spent the last 90 days getting ready for our, kind of fifth wall downtown wallscape campaign. I think the next 90 days will be really seeing if the demand is there for it. Based on the initial response, it seems like it really is. I'd say probably one of the biggest hurdles for our airport ads was just simply the cost of the material. Our production costs were huge because the size of these signs near airports are huge as well. And so, when you have the Amazon signs, I think were 75,000 square feet of mesh banner. Shout out to Circle Graphics and Vincent Printing for helping us with those.
Rod Rackley's coming on later this week.
Oh, there we go. Okay. And so, you just put in the cost of mesh banner alone, and all of a sudden you get to this, I would say, kind of tier of company that anything below that, they just kind of say, really cool idea. No way we can afford that.
Sure.
And so I think in the next 90 days, we'll see if now that we're going downtown, shrinking the size of our signs tremendously, sometimes, in really like a quarter the size, maybe a fifth the size, a sixth the size. What that'll allow us is just our production costs will be lower, our total costs will be lower. Can we get into kind of those mid-market brands now who are looking to buy a wallscape and, we're really the same price, but we're just on a different wall. So that's kind of the goal. We obviously hope that with kind of the new normal, increased spending in ads comes back, along with kind of an understanding of, how we can all still function as a society while being safe. And if that all kind of happens and we're able to put some more rooftop wallscapes up in downtown, that'd be great. And then I think probably after that 90-day mark is when hopefully we'll really start to see air travel pick up again, and we might get inquiries there. But in the meantime, we've got a lot to do. So I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Where can people find you?
You can find us all over. Website, flybyads.co. You can take a look there. You can also follow us on Instagram at FlyBy Advertisements. You can find us on LinkedIn, FlyBy Ads LLC.
Easy enough, man. We'll make sure to link out to everything in the description and the show notes, and wherever you're listening or watching to this, there's going to be links to all of that. I encourage you, go check it out. It's really, really cool stuff. And if you haven't seen the Jack Ryan campaign, you're going to want to see that just because it's awesome. And the show's great. So Jack, thanks for doing this. Really, really appreciate it. And look forward to doing it again next time.
Thank you all. Thanks to our listeners. And thank you, Tim, for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. As always, make sure to click the button right below where I'm pointing. That's the subscribe button. That'll make sure you get notified of any future episodes and additional content. And as always, if you want to get swagged up, oohswag.com. Use promo code INSIDER for 10% off your first order. Things are a little bit slow because of COVID, but you get your hat eventually. So see you guys next time.